In a sealed case at the Shrine of the Book in Jerusalem, a Cave 4 parchment fragment, cataloged as 4Q206, preserves Aramaic lines from the Book of Enoch on the place later called Hell. The copy dates to the 1st century BCE. The Book of Enoch was pulled from public reading by the Council of Laodicea in 364 CE, restricted, set aside, treated as a book the churches were not to open in the assembly. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1947 at Qumran, 11 separate Enoch manuscripts came out of the caves, more copies than most of the books that stayed in the Old Testament. Enoch does not describe one fire under the earth. He describes 4 hollows in a western mountain, cut to hold every human spirit until judgment. He separates them by deed and by whether justice already happened in life. He names a valley for those who spoke against God, and a later abyss of fire for the watchers, the shepherds, and the blinded sheep. In the next several minutes, you'll see what the chapters say, what the translations flatten, what the valley outside Jerusalem still is, and why that sorting list never became Western doctrine. If forbidden biblical history fascinates you, hit subscribe. Every week, we uncover what was removed from Scripture. But here's what makes this stranger. The passage we are working with today sits first in the Book of the Watchers, chapters 1 through 36. Chapter 22 is the Mountain of the Dead. Chapter 27 is the Accursed Valley. The fire that most people treat as the whole picture arrives later, in chapter 54 of the Book of Parables, and in chapter 90 of the Book of Dreams. The Aramaic witness for the pits is 4Q206, also written 4Q206. Joseph Millick published it in The Books of Enoch at Oxford in 1976. Henrik Dronel re-edited the same family of fragments in 2019. The leather is late 2nd century or 1st century BCE. It is held by the Israel Antiquities Authority and studied with the collection at the Shrine of the Book. The surviving lines cover chapter 22, verses 3 through 7. They name the pits and the complaining dead man. They do not preserve the full 4-class list. That list travels in Greek and in Ge'ez. The Greek witness is Codex Panapolitanus, Cairo Papyrus 10759, taken from a grave at Akhmim, Egypt in 1886 and 1887. Chapter 22 is complete in that codex. Chapter 27 is in the Watcher's sequence. Chapters 54 and 90 are not. The complete book survives only in Ge'ez, in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition. Michael Knibb's Oxford edition of 1978 rests on Ryland's Ethiopic Manuscript 23, with BM 485, Tana 9, and the Abadianus copies in the apparatus. Ephraim Isaac's English for Charlesworth's Old Testament Pseudepigrapha appeared in 1983. George Nicholsberg's Hermaniah commentary of 2001 is the standard account of the seams in chapter 22. James Vanderkam places the Book of the Watchers in something like its present form by the 3rd century BCE. 4Q206 is older than any surviving New Testament manuscript. And this is where it gets disturbing. Apocalyptic writing deals in beasts, numbered angels, and thrones. Chapter 22 does not. It gives a compass direction, a mountain of hard rock, a surface finish, and a stated purpose for the cavities inside it. Raphael talks the way a site officer talks. It reads the way a field report reads, flat, sequential, specific, with no apparent awareness that a sorted prison for every human spirit should have been written as a vision instead of a survey. The text begins with this, chapter 22, verse 1. Enoch is taken west to another place and shown a great and high mountain of hard rock, verse 2. Inside it are 4 hollow places, deep and wide and very smooth. The Greek of Codex Panapolitanus adds the lighting scheme the common Ethiopic line does not carry. 3 of the hollows are dark, 1 is bright. A fountain of water stands in the midst of the bright one. R. H. Charles in 1912 printed both columns and daggered the number 4. The count is unstable on the page. The construction is not. The Greek terms are topoi koiloi and koilomata, hollow places, hollows. Spell it koilomata. That is cavity language, finished space. In 4Q206, the register tightens. Florentino Garcia Martinez rendered the Aramaic. These are the pits for their prison. They were made thus until the day of their judgment, until the final day of the great judgment which will be imposed on them. Not a cave system, a prison. Not Sheol as one pit. A sordid installation, verse 3 and verse 4 give the purpose. Raphael, one of the holy angels with him, says the hollow places were created so that the spirits of the souls of the dead would assemble in them. All the souls of the children of men. The places were made to receive them until the day of their judgment, and until the appointed period, until the great judgment comes upon them. The Greek calls them pits for the place of their confinement. The smoothness is the detail that does not belong in folklore. Smooth means worked. Worked means designed. Chapter 21 sits immediately before this and is the contrast. There, Enoch is taken to a chaotic place, no heaven above, no founded earth, a prison for the fallen stars, disorder for the watchers. Then chapter 22 turns and gives human death an interior with 4 rooms and a bright spring. Same tour. 2 architectures, one for the angels who left their station, one for the children of men. Nicolsburg, in the 2001 Hermeneia volume, treats the mountain as a gathering place where different kinds of recompense already operate before the last day. Marie-Thérèse Wecker in Weltordnung und Gericht, 1982, mapped the growth of the unit. First dark smooth caves of unspecified number, then 4 pits, 3 dark and 1 lit. The English word hell does not appear in the verse. The installation does. Isaac, in 1983, translated the openings as beautiful corners, tracking a possible fork between koloi and koiloi in the Greek stream. Beautiful is not hollow. Hollow is not a prison pit. The popular reprints chose the softest of those 3 and kept walking. The leather in Jerusalem did not. But the text doesn't stop there. Chapter 22, verse 8. Enoch asks why one hollow is separated from the other. Verse 9 opens with a number that does not match verse 2. These 3 have been made that the spirits of the dead might be separated. 4 in the mountain, 3 in the answer. Nicolsburg states the problem without resolving it into a slip of the pen. He reads verses 8 through 13 as an expansion that turned common detention pits into sorted places of preliminary reward and punishment. The tradition grew. The page kept both counts. Then the text lists 4 destinies anyway. First, a division for the spirits of the righteous, in which there is the bright spring of water. That is the lit chamber, not fire, water. Second, a division for sinners who die and are buried in the earth, and judgment has not been executed on them in their lifetime. Verse 11. Here their spirits are set apart in this great pain until the great day of judgment and punishment and torment of those who curse forever, and retribution for their spirits. There he shall bind them forever. The offense in that drawer is not a vice list, it is justice escaped while they were alive. Third, a division for the spirits of those who make their suit, who make disclosures concerning their destruction when they were slain in the days of the sinners, the murdered, separate. Their category is not what they did. It is what was done to them. Fourth, chapter 22, verse 13. A place for the spirits of men who were not righteous but sinners, who were complete in transgression, and of the transgressors they shall be companions. The Ethiopic line Charles printed, their spirits shall not be slain in the day of judgment, nor shall they be raised from thence. The Greek line, they shall not be punished on the day of judgment, and they shall not be raised from there. Not slain and not punished are not the same sentence. Both agree on the last clause, they are not raised. Think of it like a filing system with 4 drawers. One holds the righteous beside a spring, one holds the unjudged in pain until the last day. One holds the slain who still have a case. One is marked closed. No resurrection from that drawer. The categories the later West treated as the whole map were 2 rooms or 3 if a middle state is counted. This map is 4, and the sorting key is mixed. Moral quality, whether sentence already fell in life, manner of death, companionship with the lawless, complete in transgression, companions of the transgressors. Those are the load-bearing phrases for the second half of the title. The text does not say unbelief. It does not say a single lake waiting at the hour of death. It says partition. The gaze and the Greek both insist on separation, not a common waiting room. For Ezra, later, will speak of chambers of the dead. Enoch is earlier and more specific. And the 4th class is the line popular teaching cannot absorb. They are sinners. They are not raised. That is what chapter 22 writes, on a seam the editors have never closed. The mountain is only the first stage. What the text does with one named occupant of those hollows, and with the valley that is not a hollow at all, is the next movement in the same tour. What follows in chapter 22 is stranger still. Before the four-class list is finished, the tour stops on a single voice, chapter 22, verse 5. Enoch sees a dead man making suit. His voice goes forth to heaven and makes suit, verse 6. Enoch asks Raphael whose spirit this is, whose voice reaches heaven, verse 7. Raphael answers with a name. This is the spirit which went forth from Abel, whom his brother Cain slew. He makes his suit against him till his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth, and his seed is annihilated from amongst the seed of men. Make suit, make disclosures. That is courtroom language, not prayer language. The Greek and the Ethiopic both keep the legal register. Abel's not at rest. Abel's on the docket. Genesis chapter 4 verse 10 had already given the blood a voice from the ground. Chapter 22 builds a chamber and a procedure around that cry. The complaint does not end at the grave. It runs until a line is wiped off the earth. Verse 12 then turns the named case into a class. A division has been made for the spirits of those who make their suit, who make disclosures concerning their destruction when they were slain in the days of the sinners. The murdered have their own hollow. Popular talk about hell sorts the dead by what they themselves did. This hollow sorts them by what was done to them. The title's second clause has a reverse face. Some are in the mountain because of someone else's sin, and the text does not say they are silent. Nickelsburg notes that later tradition read Abel as the prototype of the martyred righteous. The chapter itself gives one example and one function. The first murder remains open. The killer's seed is still the subject of a suit. Whether every later victim shares that drawer is a reading, not a second verse. The verse that exists is already enough. Unavenged killing is its own afterlife category in the Book of the Watchers. 4Q206 is the oldest witness to this beat. After the pits for prison lines, the Aramaic column continues. There I saw the spirit of a dead man complaining and his moaning, rising to heaven, crying and complaining. The fragment breaks. The name Abel is carried by the Greek and the Geas. The complaint is already on the leather. A dead man speaking. A prison built to hold him until a judgment that has not yet arrived. There is one more detail from the same tour that deserves attention. Chapter 27, verse 1. Enoch looks at a blessed land entirely filled with trees and an accursed valley between. Verse 2. Uriel answers, this accursed valley is for those who are accursed forever. Here shall all the accursed be gathered together, who utter with their lips against the Lord unseemly words, and of his glory speak hard things. Here shall they be gathered together, and here shall be their place of judgment. Verse 3. In the last days there shall be upon them the spectacle of righteous judgment in the presence of the righteous forever. The merciful bless the Lord of glory there. The righteous watch. Chapter 27 does not mention fire, none. The valley is a last day's gathering site, not the four hollows of chapter 22. Intermediate state and terminal site are not the same place. Chamber first, valley second, fire third. The named offense is speech, unseemly words against the Lord, hard things of his glory, not a generic vice list, not the later catalog most pulpits use. This is the cleanest sentence the text gives for the second half of the title. Scholars have long set the valley against Gehinnom, the valley of Hinnom, south and west of Jerusalem, the toponym that became Gehenna. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 24, had already given the righteous a view of those who rebelled. Chapter 27 is the second temple hinge between that verse and the later gospel use of the name. The valley is for the accursed forever. The hollows are for all the children of men until the appointed period. Mixing those two sentences is how a single-room fire gets written back onto a book that did not write one. The Watcher's tour keeps them apart. Raphael handles the mountain, Uriel handles the valley. Two angels, two sites, two functions. And then comes the part that most accounts leave out. The fire arrives on a later page, and it does not arrive for every occupant of the mountain. Chapter 54, verse 1. Enoch looks to another part of the earth and sees a deep valley with burning fire. Verse 2. They bring the kings and the mighty and begin to cast them into this deep valley. Verse 3. Iron chains of immeasurable weight. Verse 4 and verse 5. The chains are prepared for the hosts of Azazel, to take them and cast them into the abyss of complete condemnation, and to cover their jaws with rough stones as the Lord of Spirits commanded. Verse 6. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Phanuel take hold of them on that great day, and cast them into the burning furnace, for becoming subject to Satan and leading astray those who dwell on the earth. Chapter 54 belongs to the Book of Parables, chapters 37 through 71. No Qumran copy of the parables has been identified. The Valley of Fire in that chapter travels in gaze. Its date is later than the Watcher's Tour and is disputed. Often the 1st century BCE or the 1st century CE. It is not on 4Q206. That absence is part of the record. The page is still read because Ethiopia kept it. Chapter 90, verses 24 through 27, is the Book of Dreams. The judgment is held first over the stars. They are found guilty and cast into an abyss full of fire and flaming and full of pillars of fire. The 70 shepherds are judged and cast into that same fiery abyss. Then a like abyss is opened in the midst of the earth, full of fire, to the right of that house. Charles and Nib both keep the house in view. The house in the animal apocalypse is the sanctuary. To the right in that geography is south. South of the sanctuary is the Valley of Hinnom. They bring the blinded sheep. All judged, all found guilty. Cast in, they burned. The text adds the bones. Chapter 90, verse 27. I saw those sheep burning and their bones burning. Think of it like 2 buildings on one campus. One is a records hall with 4 drawers already in use. One is a furnace room opened later for named groups on a scheduled day. They are not the same door. The occupants of the fire are named. Fallen stars. Shepherds who killed more than they were commanded. Apostate sheep. Kings and the mighty. The host of Azazel, leading the earth astray. That is not identical with every sinner waiting in the second hollow of chapter 22. Fire is terminal and restricted. The hollows are the filing system. The furnace is a later installation. Chapter 108, verses 3 through 6, folds in without opening a new drawer. A chaotic wilderness fire. No earth there. Spirits of sinners and blasphemers, and of those who pervert everything the Lord has spoken through the mouth of the prophets. Speech again. Distortion of what was said. The appendix in chapter 27 agree on the mouth. 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 4 uses Tartarus for the imprisoned angels. Jude verse 6 binds angels in chains until judgment. Revelation chapter 20 will give the West its lake of fire. Those are later sentences. They are not Enoch quoting them. The Book of Enoch had already split the map. Wait in the mountain, gather in the valley, burn in an abyss prepared for specific classes. Not one fire under the earth. 2 stages. A prison first, a furnace later. The part that shouldn't be possible is this. The text describes a mountain in the west containing smooth, deep, separated hollows built to hold and sort the dead, and later an accursed valley beside a blessed land where the cursed are gathered in the last days. The modern record on the ground is a valley west and south of the old city of Jerusalem that has been a necropolis of cut chambers for 26 centuries. Guy Ben Hinnom, Wadi Rababa, the Valley of Hinnom. Iron Age rock-cut tombs with inner rooms, benches, and bone repositories. Reused through the Persian, Hellenistic, Roman, and Byzantine periods. In 1979 and 1980, Gabriel Barkay excavated Ketef Hinnom, the shoulder of Hinnom, on the slope above that valley. A late Iron Age tomb complex, 2 silver scrolls with the priestly blessing from Numbers chapter 6. At the time, the oldest biblical text then known. The New York Times reported the Hinnom Slope tombs on the 1st of July 1986. The Israel Antiquities Authority kept cutting salvage squares on the same slopes. Zubair Adawi in 2006, Alexander Riegman in 2014, David Gelman in 2015. Quarries, caves, burial cuts. A Kerrit cemetery still occupies part of the bank. Promenades and a climbing wall have driven more of the recent permits than any interest in Enoch. Gehinnom became Gehenna. The valley that had held the Topheth became, in Second Temple speech, the image of last punishment. Chapter 27 sits on that hinge. Chapter 22's western mountain of hollow chambers sits as literature next to a real western and southwestern necropolis of cut chambers. Chambered burial landscape in the west. Chambered afterlife in the west. Named Valley of Curse beside the holy precinct. Named Accursed Valley beside the blessed land. That is the correspondence. It is not a proof. Barquet found jewelry, bones, and silver amulets. He did not find Raphael. The 4 hollows are not 4 tagged caves on a tourist map. The sentences sit beside the trenches. Then the record stops. Here's what the translators left out. The English most readers own is Charles, 1912, reprinting the Ethiopic line of chapter 22, verse 2. 4 hollow places deep and wide and very smooth. How smooth are the hollow places and deep and dark to look at? Dark. All of them in that cadence, the Greek of Codex Panapolitanus. In the same verse is not that sentence. 4 hollow places deep and very smooth. 3 of them dark. 1 bright. A fountain of water in its midst, 4Q206, does not use hollow at all in the published extract. Pits for their prison. Isaac, 1983, gave beautiful corners tracking the Kaloi and Koiloi fork Charles had already flagged. Beautiful's not hollow. Hollow is not a prison pit. Dark only is not 3 dark and 1 lit. What the common English flattens is the lighting scheme and the lock. 1 chamber in the Greek is not dark. The Aramaic is not geology, it is incarceration. A reader of the reprint can finish chapter 22, believing Enoch saw 4 gloomy caves. The oldest Greek witness says one of them had a spring and was bright. The oldest Aramaic witness says prison. But what the standard translation hides is this. Chapter 22, verse 13 in the Ethiopic line Charles printed, "Their spirits shall not be slain in the day of judgment, nor shall they be raised from thence." The Greek, "They shall not be punished or tormented on the day of judgment, and they shall not be raised from there." Not slain, not punished. Those are not the same fate. One sounds like exemption from a death administered at judgment. The other sounds like exemption from torment. Both witnesses agree they are not raised. The 4th class is the sentence popular hell talk cannot store. Sinners. Companions of the lawless. Complete in transgression. And then a closed file. Charles daggered 4 in verse 2 and 3 in verse 9. The numbers were already marked as unstable. The 4th destiny was printed anyway. The reprints kept the softer verb and let the harder ones sit in the apparatus. If the categories of the dead fascinate you as much as the places do, subscribe and stay with the reading. The next pages are the reason this map did not become Western doctrine. The suppression starts at the Council of Laodicea in 364 CE. Canon 59 of that synod in Phrygia is the sentence that matters. No private psalms and no uncanonical books to be read in the church. Only the canonical books of the Old and New Testament. Canon 60's list of titles is missing from some manuscripts and is disputed. Enoch is on neither version of the public reading rule. What the synod did was restrict the assembly. What it did not do was hold a trial of the book or burn a library. Jerome, in De Viris Illustribus chapter 4, records the problem that followed. Jude is received among the Catholic epistles. Because he quotes the apocryphal Book of Enoch, many reject Jude. Age and use kept Jude. Enoch stayed outside the Latin practice. Augustine, City of God, Book 15, chapter 23, is more precise and more severe. He cannot deny that Enoch, the 7th from Adam, left some divine writings, the Apostle Jude says so in a canonical epistle, but those writings have no place in the canon preserved in the temple of the Hebrew people. Antiquity brought them under suspicion. It was impossible to ascertain whether they were genuine. The books circulating under Enoch's name, with the fables about the giants, are judged not genuine. Tertullian had already taken the other side. On the Apparel of Women, Book 1, Chapter 3. Jude is his warrant. He treats Enoch as scripture suitable for edification and suggests the book was dropped because it testified of the Lord. Origen is cautious, ambivalent. The fight is in surviving books. It is not a modern invention. Ethiopia did not follow the Latin settlement. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church kept 1st Enoch in the broader canon and copied it inside scripture codices. The complete map of Hollows Valley and Fire exists because that church kept copying it. In 1773, James Bruce brought 3 Jayas manuscripts to Europe. Richard Lawrence published the first English translation in 1821. R. H. Charles issued the edition the West still quotes in 1906, and the annotated translation of 1912. The irony does more work than any later complaint. Jude, verses 14 and 15, quotes 1 Enoch chapter 1, verse 9, as prophecy. Enoch, the 7th from Adam. The wording aligns closely with the Greek of Codex Panapolitanus. The book restricted from public reading is cited as prophecy inside the New Testament the same churches kept, not hidden in a vault, restricted from the lectionary, incompatible with the closing of a Western list. The Ethiopian list did not close the same way. Now here's where it gets active. The chapter that sorts the dead by deed is not the chapter the caves proved in full. 4Q206's surviving lines stop before the 4-class catalog. The sorting system that carries the title lives in Greek and Gaias. The leather that is used to date the book does not hold the drawers. The Book of Parables, including the Fiery Valley of chapter 54, has no Dead Sea copy. Everything said about those chains and that furnace depends on Gay's manuscripts, most of them copied from the 15th century onward. Millick's plates and transcriptions of the Aramaic Enoch family appeared in 1976. Dronall's full reedition appeared in 2019. 43 years. Conservation of fragmentary leather, academic priority. Watchers and the Astronomical Book first, because they have Aramaic. Parables last, because they do not. Complete Enoch remains a Gaia's book. Major witnesses stay in Ethiopian church and library custody. European critical editions rest on a subset. Rylands 23, BM 485, Tana 9, the Abadianus copies. Access is institutional and slow. Ordinary reasons, national heritage, fragile skin, funding. The effect is the same as a locked room. The public still meets chapter 22 in a 1912 English cadence, while the oldest witness of the pits is a broken column about a dead man complaining. Now let me be clear, I am not saying there is a doorway in a named mountain that can be visited with a ticket. I am not saying Ket of Hinnom is Enoch's 4 hollows. I am not saying a single council hid a map of hell in one session. The Book of Enoch is not a treasure map to the underworld, and this record does not pronounce on any viewer's fate. But what the text describes, when read carefully, is not the single-room fire the later West treated as the whole picture. Chapter 22 describes 4 constructed chambers and 4 classes of the dead. Chapter 27 names speech against the Lord as the offense of the accursed valley. Chapter 54 and chapter 90 describe fire as a later sentence for specific groups. Jude still quotes Enoch. Ethiopia still keeps the book. The Hinnom slope is still a necropolis of cut chambers. What we have to confront is that the oldest surviving Jewish tour of the afterlife in this tradition is a filing system first and a furnace later. The sins it names are unavenged blood, justice escaped in life, companionship with the lawless, hard words against God's glory, and leading the earth astray. That is not the list most later teaching used. The class it says will not be raised is not in the catechism. The page kept the seam. 4 in one verse, 3 in the next. The 4th drawer still marked closed. The fragment 4Q206 is still in Jerusalem. The Achaemenid Greek of chapter 22 is still in Cairo. The Gaia's manuscripts remain in Ethiopia, and Enoch remains in that canon. The Valley of Hinnom is still west and south of the Old City, still cut with chambers. The 4 verses 3 seam in chapter 22 is still on the page. Jude 14 and 15 are still in the New Testament. The hollows are still described as sealed until the judgment. The valley is still on the map.